ശ്രീകൃഷ്ണാർപ്പണമായി വരേണമഖിലം ചിന്തിപ്പതും ചൊൽവതും ചെയ്തിടുന്നതും ഉള്ളിലാഗ്രഹമുറന്നീടായിക മറ്റൊന്നിലും പീലിപ്പൊന്മുടിമാലയും മുരളിയും പൂണ്ടേറി മിന്നിടുമേ ബാലബ്രഹ്മമകക്കുരുന്നിൽ വിളയാടണം നമുക്കങ്ങനെ. ശ്രീ ഗുരുവായൂരപ്പാ ശരണം. സാന്ദ്രാനന്ദാവബോധാത്മകമനുപമിതം കാലദേശാവധിഭ്യാം നിർമുക്തം നിത്യമുക്തം നിഗമശതസഹസ്രേണ നിർഭാസ്യമാനം അസ്പഷ്ടം ദൃഷ്ടമാത്രേ പുനരുരു പുരുഷാർത്ഥാത്മകം ബ്രഹ്മതത്വം തത്താവദ്ഭാതി സാക്ഷാൽ ഗുരുഭവനപുരേ ഹന്തഭാഗ്യം ജനാനാം. ശ്രീ ഗുരുവായൂരപ്പാ ശരണം. ജഗദംബികാ സ്മരണം. ശ്രീ മഹാദേവ്യേ നമഃ. സംപൂജ്യരായ സ്വാമിജിമാർക്കും ഭഗവാന്റെ പ്രതിരൂപങ്ങളായി മുമ്പിലിരിക്കുന്ന എല്ലാ ഭക്തജനങ്ങൾക്കും ധന്യാത്മാക്കൾക്ക് എല്ലാവർക്കും എൻ്റെ വിനീത നമസ്കാരം. ശ്രീമദ് ഭാഗവതം has been celebrated in several Puranas other than Bhagavata itself. Srimad Bhagavatam itself is a Mahapurana. Many people call it a Super Purana because generally there is a claim on behalf of the Devi Bhagavata also as one of the Mahapuranas. So people say, Vaishnavas say that Srimad Bhagavata, if at all it has to concede that place to Devi Bhagavata, then Srimad Bhagavata takes not the place of an Upapurana as people generally believe, at least some of them believe, but then in that case, if Devi Bhagavata is accommodated as one of the Mahapuranas among the 18 Puranas, then Srimad Bhagavata takes the place of a Mahapurana. Srimad Bhagavatam has been celebrated in many other Puranas. Some of them are Vaishnava Puranas, most of them are Vaishnava Puranas, but even in a Shaiva Purana, like the Skanda Purana, we find Bhagavatam being glorified. In Kerala generally, the Bhagavata Mahatmya occurring in Srimad Padma Purana is mostly recited in Bhagavata Saptahas. There are also occasions when there's 4 chapters of Skanda Purana are also recited. In Padma Purana, in the 6 chapters which we recite as Bhagavata Mahatmya, we find the narration of 3 Bhagavata Saptahas. 2 are reported ones which Gokarna had done for Dundukari. These 2 are reported ones for Dundukari first, and then the others who had earlier listened along with Dundukari but did not have the fortune to go to Vaikuntha along with Dundukari because they had not listened to the recital properly. For them, Gokarna did it a second time. These 2 are reported ones. But in the Bhagavata Mahatmya, we also we witness the Saptaha done by Sri Narada Maharshi in the great august presence of the Sanat Kumaras. There, at the end of it, we find Sri Hari himself appearing before them, and along with Sri Hari, great personages like Sri Shuka Brahmarshi. There, Sri Shuka Brahmarshi has given one shloka as the description of Srimad Bhagavata. It runs like this: Srimad Bhagavatam Purana Tilakam Yad Vaishnavanam Dhanam Yasmin Paramahamsyam Ekam Evam Amalam Jnanam Param Giyate. yatra bhakti jnana viraga bhakti sahitam naishkarmyam avishkritam yat shrunvan prabadhan vicharana paro bhaktya vimuchyen nara. Srimad Bhagavatam is considered to be the crest jewel among the Puranas. The word used is Purana Tilakam. Tilakam is the vermilion mark or the white mark put by the Vaishnavas, the binti on the forehead. But then when we translate it, because of the currency of the expression, probably we should say it is a crest jewel among the Puranas. Srimad Bhagavatam Purana Tilakam Yad Vaishnavanam Dhanam. This is the rich possession that the Vaishnavas would love to hold along with them all the time. It is described as Dhanam, Yat Vaishnavanam Dhanam. Yasmin Paramahamsyam eva mamalam jnanam param giyate. Knowledge is celebrated here. What kind of knowledge? The esoteric knowledge. The gnosis, as we call it. The gnosis that leads us to the state of Paramahamsa, or the knowledge in which the Paramahamsas revel. That is the knowledge that has been celebrated here. And here it is in combination with bhakti, and that is devotion, and vairagya, renunciation. Bhakti jnana viraga sahitam. And this actually is the description given by, and listening to that, subjecting that to manana, contemplation, and listening to that, and by studying it, one reaches the ultimate state, one reaches truth itself. This is the description given by Srimad Shuka Brahmarshi. And Shuka Brahmarshi, whatever he had learned from his father, he had imparted it to King Parikshit, who was facing death before him, who was in face to face with death. And Suta Pauranika happened to listen to that, and Suta Pauranika narrates it to the sages led by Shaunaka, Sri Shaunaka, and that is what we hear. Towards the end of Srimad Bhagavatam text itself, what now we had examined is from Padma Purana, where the Mahatmya has been recited, given. But by the end of the text itself, Srimad Bhagavata text itself, when we come to the end of it, among the last few shlokas, a similar shloka occurs, which had been recited by Suta, who had listened the entire Bhagavatam from Shuka Brahmarshi. And there the same shloka is repeated with minor variations. I'm sure all the people here, people who had been listening to Mukti Sudhakaram, we call it Mukti Sudhasagaram, by Sampuja Swamiji, they are very well familiar with that shloka. The variation is very minor. There the Suta says, Srimad Bhagavatam, instead of Purana Tilakam, it's mentioned Purana Mamalam. Instead of Yad Vaishnavanam Dhanam, it's mentioned Yad Vaishnavanam Priyam. There it is Dhanam, here it is Priyam. That's the only difference. And then towards the end, there it is mentioned Yat Shrunvan Prabadhan Vicharana Paro Bhaktya Vimuchyen Nara. Here it is mentioned Yat Shrunvan Vipadhan. There it is Prakashena, here it is Vicheshana. That's the only difference. This is an apt description of Srimad Bhagavata. And there what has been celebrated is a combination of bhakti, jnana and vairagya. Perhaps it is not nice to say combination, because bhakti at its acme, at its highest point, is vairagya itself. Vairagya at its highest point is jnana itself. So there is perhaps towards the end of one's spiritual journey, there is absolutely no difference between devotion, renunciation and knowledge. these can very well be used as synonyms. But Srimad Bhagavatam has generally been celebrated as a Bhakti Shastra. And what exactly is the reason when Sri Shuka Brahmarshi speaks about Bhagavatam in this manner, that it harmonizes all the three and it is celebrating all the three? That explains why sage Shuka lent himself to sit at his father's feet and learn it from sage Vyasa. Otherwise, Sri Shuka Brahmarshi's reputation is that he never stays in a place even for a few moments. He stays at a place Godohana Matram. That is, he stays at a place exactly for that time which is required for milking the cow by one stroke. That is the time that he stays at one place. Otherwise, all the time, he is an Avadhuta, all the time on Parivrajana, and he doesn't lend himself to be taught by anybody, in the sense that not because of arrogance, but then he has identified himself with the entire universe, so there is no way he can be stopped by anyone. But Bhagavata is such a text. Atma Ramascha Munaya Nirgrantha Apyurukrame Kurvanna Haidukim Bhaktim Itham Bhuda Guno Hari. The sages under Shaunaka is putting this particular question. Shaunaka puts this question to Sudha. You mentioned to us that you had learnt it while this had been narrated by sage Shuka to Parikshit. And sage Shuka had learned it from his father, but then how come that sage Shuka was able to sit at a place and listen to this, and because he doesn't stay at any place for a longer time than is required for milking the cow. Then Sudha says, Alpa Ramascha Munaya, the sages like Sri Shuka Brahmarshi, they are Nirgrantha. Nirgrantha can have two meanings. One is that they don't have to depend on book learning. They don't have to depend on grantha. Otherwise, itself they are full in knowledge. The other one is probably that they are not affected by the knots of ignorance. Grandhi. They are not affected by the knots of ignorance. They are not affected by the knots of desire. They are not affected by the knots that can create by a person who lives surrounded by worldliness. They are not affected by any of these knots. Nirgrantha api urukrame kurvanna haidukim bhaktim. But then they entertain great costless, ahaiduki bhakti, costless. That bhakti is not for attaining any end. It is without any ultimate thing in mind, because bhakti itself is the sadhya thing. Bhakti is for bhakti's sake, ahaiduki bhakti. They have that kind of ahaiduki bhakti in Hari. And such are the inherent qualities of Sri Hari that though they are great jnanis, they love this text. This is the Mahatmya of Bhagavata. Otherwise, Sri Shuka Brahmarshi would not have been there at Sri Vyasa's feet for such a long time. In the beginning of Bhagavata itself, perhaps in the second chapter of the first skandha itself, and there is a particular shloka. That shloka we also recite in the Mangalacharan of Bhagavata. It runs like this: Yam pravrajandam anupedam apeda krityam Dvaipayano virahakadara ajuhava putredi tanmayadaya taravo abhinedu tam sarvabhuta hridayam munim anatosmi. There, what is celebrated is not particularly the devotion of Sri Shuka, nor is it the renunciation, nor is it the knowledge of Sri Shuka. What has been celebrated here is his Sarvabhuta Hridayada. his oneness with the entire universe. His feeling of oneness with the entire universe, because he has obliterated his small self. And he has identified himself with the self starting with the capital S. And that sense of oneness is such that nobody can ever address him, nobody can ever elicit a reply from him, unless he actually, if that, for example, in the shloka itself it is mentioned that Sri Shuka Brahmarshi, who is the son of sage Vyasa, he leaves his hermitage, father's hermitage, and goes out without lending himself for any of the formalities, any of the formal rituals like Upanayana or marriage. For any of those ceremonies, he doesn't lend himself for any of those things. And sage Vyasa, though a great jnani, all said and done, the father's heart in him is hurt by this action of his son, wherein he walks out of the ashrama without lending himself for any of these things. So sage Vyasa calls him with a grief-stricken heart. He calls him out, oh my son, please wait, please come back." But then his son had identified himself with the universe so much that he did not have the ears to lend, or rather, he was actually answering the call through the trees standing around the ashrama. When the call emanated from the father's heart, all the trees, they gave out a murmuring sound, which was equivalent to answering the call, because Sri Shuka Brahmarshi had identified with the universe, with each and everything in the universe. He had identified himself with the trees around. The trees had been seeing sage Vyasa. For them, he is sage Vyasa is also their it's a father figure. When the call is actually addressed towards the son, Sri Shuka, the answer, they can very well answer it, because each one of them represented Sri Shuka. And Sri Shuka answered it without opening his mouth, because he had identified with the entire world. It is enough that the trees answer that. That is a kind of oneness he had attained. This is what is celebrated even at the beginning of the text. There, nothing has been mentioned. In this particular shloka, nothing has been mentioned about Sri Shuka Brahmarshi's devotion, renunciation or knowledge. It is the Prapanchaikya Bodha, oneness with the universe, that has been celebrated. And it is through this, inculcating this oneness, that he had relieved Parikshit of his mortal fear of death. Parikshit knew that death was to visit him in 7 days. It was a certainty. For all of us, it's a certainty that death will one day visit us. But then, considering the span of human life, probably we may say that it might come after 50 years, it might come after 20 years, maybe another 1 year I may live. But then here there was a certainty that death would visit him in 7 days' time. At the end of the 7th day, death would visit. That certainty was there before him. And Parikshit, by the time we come to the end of the narration of Bhagavata, Parikshit had been relieved of that fear. Nowhere is it mentioned that Sri Shuka Brahmarshi saved him from the mortal death, from the death of the body. Nowhere has been mentioned. When we come to the 12th canto of Bhagavata, what we see is that King Parikshit has been relieved from the fear of death. And the 5th chapter of the 12th canto, Panchama Adhyaya, it is the 5th Adhyaya, is called Brahmopadesha. The entire Bhagavatam is Brahmopadesha, but then here, this chapter, comprising just 13 shlokas, it's a very small chapter. Here, we don't find anybody else speaking. All the 13 shlokas are recited by Sri Shuka Brahmarshi. Sri Shuka Uvacha, it starts, and then at the end of it, Sri Shuka Brahmarshi asks Parikshit, are you happy? Are you fearless now? You have been putting many questions to me. Have I answered those questions properly? Have your queries been answered? Have your thirst been appeased? Are you happy? And then Parikshit says, it's a 7th day, he says, Dhanyoham, Anugrahitoham, Dhanyosmi, Anugrahitosmi. Because of your greatness, because of your mercy, I stand blessed. He knew that Takshaka could come any time, touch his body, and then burn it to ashes, convert it into cinders. But then he says, I am blessed. I have been enriched. Dhanyoham, Dhanyosmi. I have been enriched. I have been blessed. This feeling had been created because he had been freed from the fear of physical death. And for freeing the physical death, what had been employed is this technique of making him understand that there is no other way life attains fulfillment by when you identify yourself with the entire created world. And when we say created world, it doesn't mean the physical things of the world, but then because you see the entire Jagat, through the entire universe, you see the creator behind that. And it's not as though God has created it. It is as though God has projected it. More than creation, the word appropriate would be projection. God has projected this entire world from himself. It is not as though he had to go elsewhere, fetch the things to be, they're like bricks. We bring bricks and then build a building. It's not like that. It has been like an urnanabhi, like a spider weaving out the web from his own body, withdrawing it when it pleases to do so. The entire world has been created like that. So we look at the world which is anityam, which is transient, and we all the time we look at it, we also say that this is the vibhuti of the Lord who had projected it, and we identify with that. This is the technique by which Parikshit was released from the fear of mortal death. And in the entire Bhagavatam, through all the stories, through all the hymns, through all the descriptions, through all the Tattva Chinta, through all these, Bhagavatam is celebrating this ideal of oneness with whatever you see around. You don't have a separate, as a human being, we don't have a separate. This is only shell. What we contain is the Chaitanya that is all pervasive. It's so all pervasive that there is nothing else exists here. For having to, if you have to die, somebody has to come and kill, or somebody has to create a cause by which we will die. But then there's nothing else other than ourselves. This is what has been throughout given by Sri Shuka Brahmarshi. And then he says, O king, if you feel that you are going to die, Takshaka is just waiting outside. If you feel that you are going to die, I would only say that it is just an animal instinct. Give up that animal instinct by which you have been, all along you have been trained to think that you will die. What will die is just this body, not you yourself. It is like, look at a glass. Look at the word used is a ghadam. That is an urn or a kalasham. Let us take this glass. This glass has akasha inside that. And this glass is surrounded by akasha, space. There is space inside, there is space outside. If this glass breaks away, then what happens to the akasha inside? It merges with the general akasha outside. It is not as though the akasha is going anywhere. So anything that you see here, it is just a repository of Sat, Chit and Ananda. And that Satchidananda, Sat is existence, Chit is consciousness, Ananda is the bliss. In everything that we see around, there is enough of Sat. That is why we speak about it. It is a nama, it is a rupa. And what doesn't have a name and a shape also, that also has existence. Existence, we are familiar with that. And maybe some of the things that we see around us, inert, which exists, it has existence, but then it may not be conscious. But when we come to beings like we ourselves or animals, take a cow, a dog, all of them have consciousness. So we are familiar with things which have consciousness and wherein consciousness is totally dormant. And among us, rarely do we come across people who also experience bliss. But then, nevertheless, on the face of the earth, there are also people who experience the inner feeling of bliss. Here, when something happens to a thing, what it contained as existence, it merges with the existence outside. What it contained as existence and consciousness, that would also merge with what is outside. What it contains as existence, bliss and ananda, maybe in an absolutely latent form, that Chaitanya also merges with the general, the throbbing Chaitanya around us. So give up this animal feeling that you are going to die. When we sleep, it's jolly well possible for us to see that we are dying. Many of us would have experienced that. A car comes and hits and then we die. Or somebody decapitates us and we die. We die of an accident, decapitation or whatever. It's very normal for us to be in a state of dream and then see that we are dying. And we come out of the sleep, we come out of the dream and then realize that we have not died. The death that can occur to us in the Jagrada Avastha is also very much like that. King Parikshit is reminded of this by Sage Yuga. It is also like that. While remaining in this Jagrada Avastha, in the vacant state, in this stage also, we may feel that we are dying. We are in the ICU. We know that probably if we have consciousness, we know that we are actually facing from the others standing around. By seeing that our relatives have been permitted to come and meet us, we may realize that we are going to die. But then we will die also. But that death is only for the body. And when we further wake up from that Jagrada Avastha, when we wake up ourselves into that Turiya Avastha, then we find that this death was also just a myth, like the death which we had dreamt of while we were sleeping. So give up that feeling. Aham Brahma Param Dhama Brahmaham Paramam Padam. Please tell yourself, Aham Brahma, I am Brahma. Aham Brahma Param Dhama, the final resort, the final destination. That I am Brahma, and Brahmaham Paramam Padam. Brahman am I, Brahmaham Paramam Padam, the supreme state. I am Brahma, Brahma I am. Say that again and again. Aham Brahma Param Dhama, Brahmaham Paramam Padam. Evam Samichanna Altmanam Altmanyadhaya Nishkale. Say that again and again and recognize yourself in your real self. Recognize your small self, starting with small s. Recognize that self as having been merged. It is actually nothing but a reflection of the real self. Your real self is that big self, starting with capital S. Please tell yourself that. Evam samichanna alpmanam alpanyadhaya nishkale. Dashandam tatshagam. Padai, your feet will now be bitten by the takshaka. Please do recognize that the takshaka that is now aspiring to bite your feet, your own body, the takshaka, its deadly poison, its tongue spewing out flames of poison, and the Vishwam itself. Dashandam tatshagam padai lelihanam vishananai na drakshyasi vishwam ja pradhagalpmana. Don't see yourself, the Vishwam, the Jagat, the world, and the Takshaka that is going to bite you as different from one another. All these are one and the same. Tell it to yourself again and again. And then he finally asks, do you want to hear anything more? And by that time, the curiosity of knowing further has well been appeased. Parikshit feels that he has known what is there to be known. What ought to be known, I have already known as. And that is how they part. So this is the feeling that is given with the sense of identifying, with a sense of identification with the entire body. We will be able to release ourselves from the death of, from the fear of death. Probably if somebody asks us what is the greatest fear we have, we say we fear death. If not one's own death, what we consider as ours, like the children, family members, or for a person who doesn't have a family, probably his possessions. These are the things very often when we identify ourselves with a small self, very often we say we are very selfless. We consider others as more important as ourselves. It's true. But then in all such occasions we are relating them to our small self, not to our big self. If we relate them to our big self, then we will understand that this big self is not different from that big self. So there will be no occasion to say my child, my husband, my mother, and so on. So he says this feeling that very often we say, I'm not afraid of my death. I'm only afraid afraid of the death of my dear ones. But then any kind that when we speak about the death of our dear ones, we are again referring to the death of their bodies, not their real self. So we have to release ourselves from this. This is the great lesson given by Srimad Bhagavatam. In the Panchama Skanda, in the 5th canto, we come across the stories relating to the life of, the line of Swayambhuva Manu. Swayambhuva Manu is our ancestor, the first ancestor. We go back in tradition, we go back by generations. He is the first human being, and Swayambhuva Manu and Shatarupa Devi, his wife, they give birth to children like Uttanabada, Priyavrata, and then 3 daughters, Devahuti, Prasudi, and so on. We find the stories relating to, in the 4th canto, we come across the stories of Uttanabada, Dhruva, and so on. In the Panchama Skanda, we come across the stories of Priyavrata and his predecessors, his successors. Priyavrata and his son Agnidra, his son Nabhi, and then his son Rishabha, who is none other than an incarnation of Lord Vishnu himself. King Rishabha had 100 children, sons. Many of them, 9 of them are Navayogis. 81 of them are Shrotriyas. 9 of them, like Bharata, kings. And all the children have assembled on this occasion when the king is going to remit his kingdom and then go away to the forest. He is going to take to the forest. It was an august assembly. All the children were there. It's doubtful whether his children needed this, probably except those who had been anointed as kings. All the others they were great jnanis themselves. So Rishabha had given an advice, but one that is marked with a lot of love, concern for the coming generation. A lot of, one has to sit and study that because it provokes a lot of thought, a great thought-provoking advice he had given, more for us than for his own children, considering the stature of his children. There he says, there are ever so many unforgettable things that he says. One of them that stands out, but particularly with reference to us, is a stanza wherein Rishabha says, A guru is not a guru, a relative is not a relative, a father is not a father, a mother is not a mother, a husband is not a husband. Why? Even God is not God if He doesn't save you from the fear of the clutches of the, if He doesn't save you from the clutches of the fear of death, which is impending. Gurur na sasyat, swajano na sasyat, Pita na sasyat, janani na sasyat, devam na tatsyat, na patischa sasyat, namo jayedya samupeta mrityum. Mrityu is just talking at the door. And if your relative cannot give you freedom from that fear, he is not a relative. He is not a father, he is not a mother, he is not a guru, he is not a pati, husband, or he is not God himself. So what do we have to do? Rishabha, through the eons, has been reminding us of this. And how do we remind our children about how do we release them from the fear of death? Looking at a child's face, who can ever say that you are going to die, so I am going to release you from the clutches of fear of death? No one, no mother will be able to say that. No father will be able to say that. What is a way of relieving that person from this kind of death? The only way is to remind the child not about the death, but remind the child about the immortality. The immortality not that is waiting for him, but the immortality in which he is now itself abiding. Let him abide, let him or her, let the child abide in the big self. That self-abidance means abiding in immortality itself. That is the only way we can relieve them from the fear of death. That's the only way we can release them from the clutches of death. We have to, a parent might think that it's very important to give the person worldly education, the education that will help the child earn his own livelihood, which will help him fill his udaram bharanam. For that, whatever education we have to give, we may think it's very important. We may feel that it's very important to find a good alliance for the child, a good house, build a good house for the child, fetch a good job for the child, take care of the grandchildren. All of us feel that we are doing great things. Maybe it's important, but then the greatest thing is we have to create this feeling of immortality in the child. We don't have to ask the children to go and fetch immortality, but the child is immortality itself. We have to make the child understand that. And in the present circumstances, how do we do that? Everywhere Bhagavata speaks about the technique of how to do that also. Srimad Bhagavatam, Ekadasha Skandham, it's all advice given by Sri Krishna to Uddhava. At that time, Sri Krishna chooses to go to his abode. And we have to always remember, when we speak about the Swadhama Gamanam of Sri Krishna, it is nothing but God is going back to all of us only. He is going back to all of us. Until that time, he was inside, he was outside, in the form of Sri Krishna. Now that he is going to withdraw this outer form, external form, he is going to remain steadily, permanently inside us. That is the Swadhama Gamanam. But nevertheless, Uddhava, having been what he has to Krishna, and Krishna having been what he has been to Uddhava, Uddhava feels sad that Sri Krishna Bhagavan is going back to his abode. At that time, Sri Krishna Bhagavan tries to take away the sadness of parting by giving his own nectarine words. And somewhere he speaks in the 16th chapter, Sri Krishna Bhagavan speaks about his own glory. It is the Vibhuti. About Sri Krishna gives a description of his own Vibhuti. more for our consumption than for Uddhava's consumption. Because when Sri Krishna speaks about his glory in absolutely metaphysical terms, it will be difficult for us to understand that. So what the easiest thing is, to make a child understand that something is very big, what do? We tell the child that that thing is as big as an elephant. That thing is as long as a snake. This is how we make a child understand the dimensions of certain dimensions. Here, Sri Krishna Bhagavan speaks about his glory in terms that we understand. He speaks about the phenomenal world that we are familiar with. He speaks about the upper astral worlds with which we are not very familiar. We have only heard about that. And then citing things from that higher echelons, from the things around us, Sri Krishna Bhagavan tries to make us understand what exactly he is. So in the course of that, he says, among the devas I am Indra, among the Vasus I am Agni, among the mountains I am the Himalaya, among the rivers I am Ganga, among the trees I am Ashwatha, among the elephants I am Airavata, among the horses I am Uchaishrava, and so on. So he cites his own glory like this, and then he comes to subtler and subtler things. And somewhere he says, Chemanam Abahirmadi. This is the 26th shloka of the 16th chapter of the 11th canto. There he says, Dharmanam asmi sannyasa. If we take all the dharmas, ashrama dharmas, among the 4 ashrama dharmas that are familiar to us, among the dharma and sannyasa is I am sannyasa. Among the 4 dharmas. Now, if we give a wider interpretation to dharma, and then among the entire list of dharmas, renunciation, that is what I am. Dharmanam asmi sannyasa, chemanam abahirmadi. Among the means of happiness, among the means of chema, welfare, happiness, I am abahirmadi. That is the habit of looking inside, not looking outside. Bahirmadi is all the time looking outside. The habit of looking, the training to look inwardly. Then he also says, this is a particular shloka, Guhyanam Sundritam Maunam. Among the means of keeping intact the content, the real content of esoteric knowledge, the best means is Mauna. Because if we prattle too much about Atmajnana, it is likely to get misinterpreted. Guhyanam Sundritam Maunam. And then he also says, Mithunanam Ajastvaham. Sri Brahma Deva is the best couple among all the couples. Among all the couples in plural, Brahmadeva is the best couple. How come Brahmadeva, a single person, is here identified as the best couple? Because when we speak about a marriage now around us, it is 2 people coming together. But then Brahmadeva himself had given, a part of his body became Swayambhuva Manu, another part became Shatarupa Devi, so much so that we can say it is one that has become 2. Instead of 2 becoming 1, here we find 1 becoming 2. So Brahmadeva is the best couple ever known. This is the shloka. Chemanam Abahirmati is a shloka pada. If a shloka has 4 lines, Chemanam Abahirmati is just a shloka pada. It is just 1 line among the 4 lines of a shloka. And probably we can actually reduce the entire substance of Bhagavata. Reduce something is an English expression in English. We should not use that probably. In the Indian context, probably we should say we can expand the entire essence of Bhagavata to this. Chemanam abahirmadi. Look at most of the stories relate to that. A few stories to cite. Look at what happened to Hiranyakashipu and Hiranyaksha when they were Jaya Vijaya in close proximity to Lord Hari, Sri Hari in Vaikuntha. All the time when they should have been looking inward, when the Sanat Kumaras came, what happened? They were actually looking at the body of the boys and then exclaiming, these are just boys coming to see the Sri Hari without permission. Stop them. That happened in a moment when they were looking outside. This was their vasana. And they were cursed to take 3 births in the lower levels. And in each of them, what they did was, all along they looked outside. I think it is in Narayaniyam, it has been very explicitly said, they looked for Sri Hari everywhere. They turned the entire universe upside down in search of Sri Hari. Did not find him anywhere. They failed to look inside. So they did not find. All along Sri Hari was lurking within, particularly because they are great bhaktas also. So at a point of time when they had looked outside, they committed a great error, and then it took 3 births for them to go back. Please take the story of Vritrasura. Vritrasura as Chitraketu, he had got over his worldly woes because of the advice of Sri Narada Maharshi. He had taken advice, Upadesha, initiation from Sri Narada Maharshi, and had realized Sankarshana Murti, and he had raised himself to the position of a Vidyadhara and further to the position of a Vidyadhara Pati. And then he was moving in the upper echelons, in the higher worlds. Once he saw Mahadeva himself sitting in Kailasa, giving advice to the rishis sitting in front. He was sitting there in the totally Jagadguru Bhava and giving them advice. And then Sri Parvati Devi was also there. She was adorning the left lap of Mahadeva. And here is this Vidyadharapati, a great Vaishnava for that. He was exclaiming to himself, what is the Mahadeva doing? He is celebrated as the Jagat Guru, and look at the way he has allowed Parvati Devi to sit in his lap. Even very absolutely crude people would be doing this probably in the privacy of their own inner apartments, not in public, and the rishis are sitting in front. Parvati Devi heard this, and out of her maternal love, here is a Vidyadharapati and a Vaishnava at that, a Vaishnava who should not be doing anything by way of Vimarshana, who should not be subjecting anyone to Gunadosha Chinta, and who is he commenting upon? Mahadeva himself. What was Vidyadharapati doing at that time? A person who had realized Sankarshana. For a moment, he was actually looking outside him. At that point of time, if he had been blessed enough to look within himself, he would not have said that. In a moment of outward lookingness, he commented. And then he had to be born as Vritrasura, because the mother, merciful mother, gave him a curse in the shape of, he gave him a blessing in the shape of a curse. So he came as Vritrasura. And while on the battlefield, Indra standing in front of him, wielding the Vajra Ayudha, with which Indra was to kill him, at that point of time, when we would have expected him to be absolutely outward looking, at that point, the mother's blessing was actually, it manifested at that point of time. Sri Parvati's blessing manifested itself at that point of time when he was standing in the battlefield and looking at Indra wielding the Vajrayudha, which had been shaped out of the effulgence of Sri Hari and the great penance of Rishi Dadhiji, looking at that instrument or arm with which He himself was to be killed. At that point of time, his inward lookingness, that was the thing that dominated. And looking at that, suddenly he was reminded of Sri Hari. He probably for a moment forgot that he was a fighter. What did he say? He said, Ajata Paksha iva mataram khaga, stanyam yatha valsatara chudarta, priyam priyeva vyushidam vishanna, manoravindakshade drikshade tvam. Looking at Indra wielding this arm which had been specially created to kill him, here is this person saying that, like a fledgling bird who had been left behind in the cage, who had been left behind in the nest by the mother, who had gone out in search of food, how much that fledgling bird would be listening to hear the flapping of the wings of the mother, like that, like a hungry, like a thirsty calf, yearning for the udder of the mother, like a woman truly devoted, loyal woman truly devoted to her husband, waiting for the return of the husband. In all these three ways, my mind is now yearning to reach Sri Hari. Na nagaprishtam na japarameshtyam, na nagaprishtam na japarameshtyam, na sarvabhaumam na rasadhipatyam, na yoga siddhira punarbhavam va samanjasatva virahaya kankshe. I want that position of Brahma, probably what is uppermost in the world of Brahma. I don't want that. I don't want the position of being the emperor of the world, Sarvabhauma Padam. I don't want that. I don't want the vibhutis, the Aishwarya, the opulence of Rasatala, which would vie with what is available in Swarga, which is one shade, one class better than what is available in Swarga. I don't want any of these things. I only want to merge myself in God. This is inward lookingness. And at a point when he looked outwardly, he was subjected to a curse. And at this point of time, when he was blessed with inward lookingness, he was blessed with all that he could ask for. Normally, if a person dies on the battlefield fighting, Veera Swarga is waiting for him. For him, this was not Veera Swarga, but much more than that, because he was practicing for a moment the inward lookingness. That was because he was inherently a Vaishnava, and it was Sri Parvati who had cursed. That curse could never be anything other than a blessing. So that was it. You take any story for that in Srimad Bhagavata, the Gopikas, when they came in search of Krishna, listening to his flute, for a moment they probably thought about themselves and their external fortune, Saubhagamada, and then Krishna disappeared. Then they went around in Vrindavan searching for him. No way did they find him. Then each of them started acting like Krishna, and in that imitation, they verily became Krishna itself. And in that moment of inwardness, Krishna appeared before him. Tasama virapu chauri smayamana mukhambuja pidambaradara sragvi sachan manmadha. That is the way he appeared. That was a moment of inward lookingness. Very often, because we do not have adequate words to describe the inward lookingness that is celebrated by us, by the Sanatana Dharmis, we don't have a proper word to translate this into English. We translate this into English as extroversion or extrovertedness. This is a highly defective translation, which also causes a lot of harm to the understanding of the youngsters. When we look at an advertisement inviting job applicants, very often we find the person should have such and such qualification. This is the upper age, this is the lower age. And among the qualities, we also find the person should be an extrovert. The person should be, in other words, he should not be an introvert. But then there is no word to translate our antarmukhata into English. Inward lookingness is all right, but then very often we also refer to it as introversion. When a person advertises for a job, when among the job applicants, he would select a person who is extroverted. So we always think that this bahirmukhata is a good thing. The problem occurs because of the translation. We have to have a better word to translate inward lookingness and outward lookingness into English. Let it be extrovertedness or extroversion or whatever. Let it appear in the newspapers that way. By that let us mean when they say extrovertedness. When in the job offer, when the word extrovertedness or extroversion appears, it probably means a person who should not be so narrow that he is concerned with himself. He should know how to understand the world outside, understand the pulse of the world outside, understand others' needs, respond to it, give an intelligent response to the world outside. But because of this inadequacy in the way we translate, our youngsters very often feel that this antarmukhata is a disqualification. Antarmukha samaradhya bahirmukha sudurlabha. This is how Mother has been described. The Mother of the universe has been, she is reachable, she is accessible only to those people who have this habit of antarmukhata. And as far as the people who have bahirmukhata are concerned, she is inaccessible. She is out of bounds for them. So we have to find, maybe Swamiji might highlight this. Probably Swamiji has already highlighted this. I do not know. But I feel this is something which we should be thinking over. In any case, in the Indian context, in our own parlance, antarmukhata is a great thing. Bahirmukhata is never appreciated. This is the antarmukhata that we have to cultivate in our children so that we can relieve them from the clutches of the death. The entire Bhagavatam has been about this, and probably these days when there are so many things outside to attract our children. When we speak about any advice that has been given in Bhagavata, it was not meant for Parikshit, because Parikshit, he knew that he would die in 7 days, but I don't think Parikshit was worried about that. When sage Shamika sent word that he is going to die in 7 days' time because of this, because of the Brahmana curse, because of the curse of his own son, Shringi, when Parikshit heard that, he was only happy. He was happy. He was worried that he had committed a big blunder, a great mistake, an unforgivable mistake, and he was worried. And when the news reached him that he had been cursed by that small boy Shringi, he was only happy. And he decided to give up everything, and he came to the banks of river Ganga. And then he accepted the vow of Prayopavesha. I will not eat anything, I will not drink anything, I will not, in general, I will not do indulge in ahara. Ahara can be through eyes, ahara can be through, only the ears are open only for the nectarine words of Sri Shuka Brahmarshi. He was not, he's in the beginning itself, even as he poses a question, what is to be done by a person who is facing death, even at that point of time, remember, please do remember, he said, Dashatvalam alam kuhagat tachagova gayatha Vishnugada. Let the serpent Takshaka come in any form. Let it adopt any kind of tactics to bite me. Let it bite me. I don't mind. But Dashatvalam kuhagak tachagova dashatvalam gayata Vishnugada. You people, please do recite the Vishnu Gatha. He knew it at the beginning of the 7 days. So whatever Parikshit had recited, whatever he had said, it was more meant for people like us. That is why Bhagavata comes to us not in the direct words of Parikshit, direct words of Sri Shuka to Parikshit, but in the reported manner. It is a reported speech given by Sri Shuka. It is a reported, the narration had been reported by Sri Shuka to Shaunaka Maharshi. All the Maharshis led by Shaunaka in Naimisharanya. And year after year, we people here sit in this Naimisharanya, and whatever it is for this generation, it had been for all the intervening generations. It is for this generation, it is for the generation, all generations to come. And as long as human being exists on this earth, as long as consciousness has a place on in the scheme of the universe, the words are relevant. So it is through inward lookingness we cultivate the habit of identifying with the world. Through the habit of identifying with the world, we release ourselves from the clutches of the fear of death. And that death, as we have again and again, we have been repeating that, it is not merely the physical death, it is the end of everything that we love. It is the end of everything that we hold dear to our heart. It could be end, it could be a change. We can't even take a change. A road goes in front of our house and it is now two-way traffic. Now they are going to say that it is going to be converted into a one-way road. We are upset because our movement towards another side will be affected by that. So the road doesn't disappear. Only the traffic rules change, even then it is death to us. So the only way is to identify ourselves with the entire world. Identifying ourselves with the entire world in one stroke is difficult. So bhakti has been promoted. And bhakti, when properly promoted, bhakti when properly practiced, at the acme of bhakti, it is nothing other than knowledge perfect. It is nothing other than renunciation perfect. So when we say Bhagavata is a Bhakti Shastra, it is also a Jnana Shastra. And that is what Sri Narada Maharshi, when he heard that he has to do something to make the Jnana and Vairagya wake up and restore them to their pristine glory, like their mother, Bhakti. For that, Bhakti Shastra, Bhagavata is to be practiced as a Jnana Yajna. What a beautiful harmonizing. Bhakti Shastra, Bhagavata is going to be recited here. And that Parayana is the Jnana Yajnam. Jnana Yajnam Karishyami Shuka Shastra Kathojwalam. That is what Sri Narada Maharshi said. There's a beautiful synthesis there. There is a beautiful harmonizing there. So Bhagavatam, in other words, is a practical text. It's a Prayogika Vedanta. Practical Vedanta for us. Practical Vedanta in terms in which we can understand that. Giving all the glories of Sri Krishna, giving the Dashavatara, and finally at the end of it giving the Ekadasha Skanda, the teachings in Ekadasha Skanda. Today is the last day of the, tomorrow is actually the last day, because Swamiji has rightly said that this will never be complete without the Vishnu Sahasranama. And we have come practically to the end of this 7 days discourse. Bhakti, Jnana, Vairagya. Look at all the advices. What does Kapila Maharshi say? What do the Navayogis say? What do in all the hymns? Even if you take a small hymn, and the first major hymn that we come across is that of Kunti Devi's, Kunti Stuti. And then comes the Bhishma Stuti. But even before that, Arjuna, when he saw the Brahmastra coming to him, then in 4 or 5 lines, couplets, he gives an excellent stuti there. It is, if that is expanded, probably it would be like Kapilobadesha, it would be like Nimi Navayogi Samvada, and whatever Sri Krishna had said at the end of it, that is given in a nutshell in the beginning itself. Even before Kunti Stuti, these lines occur there. So through all the stutis, through all the hymns, through all the descriptions, through all the descriptions of the incarnations, and look, Mahavishnu in his avatara as Varaha, in his incarnation as the wild boar, had been glorified by the rishis around. In Matsya Avatara, we find a few words describing him. Whether it is this Avatara or that Avatara, wherever there are descriptions, wherever there are hymns, everywhere this great esoteric learning appears in different varied colors and forms. That is all Bhagavata is about. Bhakti, Jnana, Vairagya, devotion, knowledge and renunciation, and then identification with the entire world, and all this through inward lookingness, through many stories, through many hymns. This is what had been celebrated in the Bhagavata. I'm extremely happy to be here today and being in this Naimisharanyam and being a part of this great Jnana Yajna. And people who have been sitting in front of me, you are the veritable representatives, ambassadors of Sri Hari himself. My humble salutations and pranams to each one.